Welcome back to the Save It for Parts channel, where today we're taking a look at a really interesting piece of technology that I picked up at Axeman Surplus. If you are not familiar with Axeman Surplus, then you are obviously not a regular viewer because I get all kinds of interesting stuff from them. It's a series of stores in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul, and they have all kinds of wacky, interesting, random vintage electronics, surplus industrial equipment, just all kinds of great stuff. You really have to see them to believe them. So I picked this little computer up from Axeman, and I have been just waiting for a chance to take a look at it. This is an NEC Starlet, or NEC PC-8201. Now, I'm familiar with the NEC PC-8201, which was a alternate version of the Tandy 100, Tandy 102 series of laptops. I've got one of those back here. These are one of my favorite computers from my childhood. I got a couple of these used when I was a kid, and I actually did own quite a few NEC PC-8201s because we picked up a stack of them at the State Surplus Warehouse in Alaska when I used to live near Juneau. Popping it open, it looks very similar to a Tandy 200 laptop from the same era. This came out in around 1985, where the 8201, the Tandy 100s came out around 1983, and this is kind of a slight upgrade from the old screen over keyboard, narrow screen. This one actually has the clamshell design, slightly larger screen, but interestingly, this does not use the TS-DOS or early NEC DOS. This actually runs CP/M, which is more widely known as an early pre-DOS desktop operating system. CP/M, I have not seen that show up in old laptops much, and maybe that's because I just don't have a lot of old laptops, but I think it is somewhat obscure for portable computing. Now, much like the Tandy 100s and the earlier PC-8201, the 8401 or NEC Starlet here features a Z80 processor. I think technically it's a clone of the original Z80. It runs at about 4 megahertz. It has about 64K of RAM. So all very standard for the era that this came out. It has basically the same keyboard as the 8201. Again, very similar to the Tandy 100. And this is a nice physical, mechanical clicky key keyboard. So these are great for people that like old style keyboards and are fed up with the modern chiclet keyboard things. It's a little bit bigger than its predecessors. It runs on C batteries, and it has a few more ports and options here. So we've got a variety of I/O ports in the back. And interestingly, we have this expansion slot or expansion cartridge. I believe this was originally intended for a disc video interface, but inside we have a Purple Computing 128K RAM disk cartridge. This is also known as the Side Star. I couldn't find a whole lot of information on this. I found a couple period advertisements for it. Apparently it is supposed to be a non-volatile memory cartridge. It's got an internal battery, so this is kind of like an old Nintendo cartridge with the save option on it, where you can save files onto this, and the battery supposedly lasts for 7 years, so I'm sure the battery in here is dead. I don't see an easy way to open this, but we might try to get around to playing with this thing later in the video. Anyway, I can't wait to actually fire this up and take a look at it, so let's pop some batteries in here. One other thing I wanted to note very quickly, this does have an AC adapter option. We have a DC in port on the back, and very interestingly, the electrical rating is between 6 volts and 9 volts, 1.6 watt. This is the kind of computer I love. This is the old style stuff where you just give it some DC power, anything between 6 volts and 9 volts. You use any old AC adapter you have sitting around that offers somewhere in that voltage range. Modern laptops always want exactly 19.68 volts, and they use some weird proprietary square connector that you can't find anywhere. And the old days, the 1980s, were actually, I think, the peak period for just throw kind of whatever power you've got lying around at this and it'll work. Now, I found some C batteries. I don't really use those for much anymore, but we are going to give that a try. So the battery compartment is under the lid here. The power switch is on the side, and then we have a contrast wheel. This is probably not a backlit screen. Backlights were very power hungry, and they were not common on early laptops, so you can't really use this thing in the dark, and we might have to play with the screen to be able to see it, but let's just see if this will even turn on. Alright, it does turn on, but it's not very happy about it. We are not getting the desktop menu. Let's try resetting that. Hey, that worked. Unfortunately, the contrast is really bad. This is about the best I can get it to both my eyes and the camera. It's worse contrast. It is a worse display than the Tandy 100 It's a worse display than even the NEC 8201. This is kind of painful to read, unfortunately. It was kind of meant to be used as a desktop plugged into an array of other accessories. It's kind of maybe emergency use as a laptop, or you use it on a plane and then you plug it into a real computer station when you get back to your office. Something along those lines. Now this menu looks basically just like the TRS-80 or the earlier NEC that used kind of a ROM-based TS-DOS thing. It was more of a firmware than an operating system, but this is actually CP/M, so it's using the more theoretically more powerful desktop operating system, but it's still embedded in ROM, and I believe the internal storage is shared between the operating system environment and user programs. You'll notice if we select something and hit enter, it is actually loading it into a little A prompt down here. So it's, again, this is kind of a graphical, semi-graphical shortcut to the actual command prompt, to the command line. So we have loaded, I believe, WordStar. Yep, we have, this is really hard to read. MicroPro WordStar has opened up, and it took a minute to load. All right, we have a new word processor file. All right, I've already screwed it up. It says the directory is full. I'm not sure if all of these items here are files or corrupted memory or what. It does say that there's only 31K bytes free. Normally with a Tandy 100 or clone, I would fire up BASIC and write a really bad BASIC program, but this actually does not have a BASIC interpreter preloaded in it, so that makes it a little different than some of its predecessors. Boy, this contrast is still super annoying. I'm having to kind of tilt the thing towards the window so I get enough light into the LCD screen that we can actually make out what it's saying. All right, let's try this RAM disk cartridge. Even though I'm pretty sure the battery's dead, let's see if it does anything. With the RAM disk cartridge installed, we have less memory free, and we have a couple files here that have kind of mysterious characters. So yeah, I think the memory on this is corrupted or just screwed up because that battery has died. I pulled the batteries out and power cycled the thing to try to reset it, and now we have a different array of weirdly named corrupted files, so there's definitely something wrong with the internal memory on this. I don't even have the memory expansion plugged in right now. Before this thing completely dies, let's play with some of the other features on it. So if we go over to Calc, that is again, similar, I think, to some of its competitors. It's something like a calculator or spreadsheet program. Yeah, I am used to things loading almost instantaneously on the Tandy 100 and 102. This actually takes a minute, well, a few seconds, I guess, to get these programs loaded up. And yes, it looks like this is a spreadsheet program. Let's see if it'll let me save this. And the shift keys don't seem to work either. I can't get any caps of this thing. I have no idea what I'm doing here. Half of the things I'm trying to do don't seem to be working. Well, I can see why I'd never heard of the NEC Starlet before and why it never got as popular as the Tandy 100, 102, 200 series. This thing is kind of terrible. It's not very intuitive to use. None of the commands make sense. The quick reference guide is kind of indecipherable. I could see it could be usable if you sit down and read through all 70-some pages of the quick reference guide, but yeah, the Tandy 100 series was way more user-friendly, and you could get started with that one right out of the box. Same goes for the NEC 8201, which was basically just a Tandy Kyocera clone. Very easy to use right out of the box. The 8401 here is very mysterious. Even without the memory issues, I cannot see this being as user-friendly as its competitors and its predecessors. Okay, we have another program here called the Filer, and that doesn't seem to work, so I'm not sure what that is. I thought maybe it was something like the Tandy 100's contacts list or phone book, but no, it seems to be something else that maybe needs a database file for it to run. Well, the only thing we haven't tried is the telecom program, which I actually have some hopes for. That seems to fire up just fine. So we do actually have a modem in this thing. We've got phone line, but nobody owns a phone anymore. Nobody has an analog phone line, myself included. So I want to do something with the serial port, the RS-232 port. Yes, it looks like a printer port. They weren't sure what size to make RS-232 back in the 80s. And the printer is this other weird thing that looks like a floppy disk connector. Yeah, this was the Wild West of connectors before anything really standardized. Anyway, for that serial port, I have picked up this nifty little gadget from ArcaneByte. You can find this guy at arcanebyte.com, and this is an RS-232 ESP32 Wi-Fi modem. So basically it's got ye old 25-pin connector, it has a modern ESP32 microcontroller on there, which is probably a more capable computer than the Starlet, and it has a Wi-Fi module. So this essentially tricks old computers like our NEC here into thinking it is a modem when it is actually using modern Wi-Fi. So theoretically, we might be able to go online with this or connect to a modern computer terminal or do something else. I haven't actually tried this before. I have a bunch of old computers like this, and I think this will work with various systems, so let's give it a try on the NEC Starlet. I think I actually have to take these pins off because this port also has the same pins. Then we also need to feed this 5 volts to power the modem. So we have our terminal settings in the telecom program. I'm having some more issues with this. I had to reboot it, and now we are having a disk I/O error. The memory corruption is causing some more issues here. So I'm setting up telecom to the default for the Wi-Fi modem, 1200 baud, 8-in-1. So this clicky keyboard feels really nice to use, but it's actually kind of inconvenient. It's got keys in weird places. This left shift doesn't actually seem to work. And yeah, it's kind of a hassle. And then if I mistype anything in telecom, I can't actually go back and delete it. So there's a bit of a learning curve with the thing. Okay, I finally got into the menu on that ESP32 modem. I had to do AT plus config, and we have the Wi-Fi menu now. All right, I think we're connected to the network. We have an IP address. So now we should be able to do some network stuff. Let's just see if we can connect to a Linux terminal with this. Yeah, the keyboard doesn't seem to register every keystroke. I don't know if that's an issue with the baud rate or an issue with the keyboard. Yes, I'm still struggling to get this screen readable on camera without reflections. And yes, it's just as hard to read in person. Yeah, that doesn't seem to be working either. Let's try this other retro BBS that I've used before. Well, that's actually working. So I guess the level 29 BBS just isn't working at the moment. But this one is. All right, we are connected to the Retro Campus BBS, and it gives us a list of available systems. I think the Olivetti M10 is going to be the closest to this thing because that's another Model 100 clone. So yeah, here we go. We can get international BBC News. Yeah, this is definitely the most interesting thing I've been able to do with the NEC Starlet so far. And we can pull up Wikipedia. It's a little bit clumsy here. It doesn't quite read the keystroke every time, and the caps are not consistent. I have cap locks on, but sometimes it's sending a lowercase, sometimes it sends uppercase. All right. Yeah, we didn't quite get the page I was expecting here, but we can learn about the basic programming dialects. So this NEC Starlet is so obscure it doesn't even have a Wikipedia entry. I cannot find anything about it on Wikipedia. That is just how unpopular this thing was. And the Starlet has gotten offended that I called it unpopular, and it has locked up, so I cannot get out of the telecom program. Yeah, it's crashed again. All right, we're back on the BBS homepage. We can go into chat. I've done that before as well. We did that with the Commodore 64 on a satellite modem, and that was kind of fun. I'm hunt and peck typing here because the camera is blocking my access to the keyboard. And I have mistyped my own username because, again, the keyboard is not necessarily working 100%. Now, even though our NEC Starlet does not have the BASIC interpreter built in, we could use BASIC over the BBS system, so I could write BASIC programs on here, or I could run one of these BASIC programs that they have. All right, so we are trying to load Lunar Lander. I don't know how well this is going to run on here. I guess technically it's running on the BBS and it's just sending me the text over the terminal, but again, it's scrolling off the screen here, and I don't know. Yeah, I can't actually scroll back up to read that. See if we can run something with very basic graphics. Just ASCII graphics here. So before I wrap up, I did want to play with the memory expansion cartridge, and since there are no screws in it, I'm just trying to very gently pry it apart. It seems like it might just be stuck together with some adhesive tape or something. Oh, even simpler, it's stuck together with 1970s hot glue. So there is our memory expansion. Yeah, this thing is kind of a low rent piece here. It's got tons of hot glue holding everything together. We have a lithium battery just, it looks like soldered into place. Yeah, this is not supposed to be removable. So unfortunately, even back in the 1980s, we had equipment designed to be disposable and designed with planned obsolescence. So you're definitely not supposed to reuse or upgrade this thing. And that battery seems to be spot welded on there pretty good. So I don't know if it's worth trying to pry this out and get a new one. Honestly, with how flaky the onboard memory on the Starlet is, I don't know if this is going to really do much for me, and I would only use it for 1 or 2 shots, so it's probably not worth the effort to get it going. Well, I think that about wraps up what I can do with the NEC Starlet. I could definitely do other internet BBS type things, but I could do those on any computer system, and this thing's memory is just so flaky that it's not very nice to use. Might be able to find some replacement memory chips and redo the board at some point, but that'll have to be a future video. I think the real star of the show here is this Arcane Bytes Wi-Fi modem. This thing is fantastic, and this should work for any vintage computer that needs a Hayes-compatible modem with a serial port. So yeah, we'll be seeing more of this in future videos. Thank you to Axeman Surplus for sponsoring this video, for hooking me up with the NEC 8401 Starlet computer. This thing is a real oddball piece of vintage tech. It was never very popular, and you can kind of see why, because the screen contrast is terrible, the interface is kind of terrible, and that CP/M operating system, while it tries to look like the TS-DOS ROM on the old TRS-80s, just doesn't work as well. It's not very user-friendly, and it's kind of kludgy. So yeah, you can see why this is so obscure and unpopular that it doesn't even show up on Wikipedia. That being said, I kind of like the NEC Starlet, and I will be keeping it in my vintage computer collection, and maybe we'll be doing some more things with it if I get around to replacing some of those flaky memory chips. I'll put some links in the description to the Arcane Bytes Wi-Fi modem and to Axeman Surplus. Again, I highly recommend both of those things. This Wi-Fi modem is great, Axeman Surplus is great, and while this little computer wasn't that great, at least it was an interesting video. Check out some of my other videos for projects with other vintage computers like the Tandy 100 series, Commodore 64, Osborne 1, and we've got a whole bunch more on the to-do pile, so stay tuned for those. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss my future retro tech review type videos. Finally, thank you to everyone out there for watching, and we'll see you next time.